Empress Ki is one of my favorite K-dramas of all time. It spans over 50 episodes and there are so many arcs, with so many plot twists that it just makes my head spin how some godsend people managed to cook something like this. I've rewatched it maybe 6 times already, and each time I keep learning something new that I've never thought of before. During my last rewatch, there was one thing that kept bothering me: Tanashiri. For those unfamiliar with the show, Tanashiri was the first empress to Emperor Togon Temur of Yuan China. This K-drama is considered historical fiction, and I definitely think they focused more on the fiction aspect. In Empress Ki, Tanashiri was the only daughter to the ruling regent, who was abusive and essentially puppeteered the few previous emperors. So naturally, to push forward his clan, he gets the current emperor to marry Tanashiri. Tanashiri was initially just a lazy, spoiled, non-traditional conforming brat who had little respect for customs and simply wanted to eat all day long. Such a mood, to be honest. Temur only married her because he had no other choice, so obviously he never once showed affection towards her. Soon, he gets a court lady pregnant while still refusing Tanashiri her own child, which angers her so much that she first tries to cause a miscarriage and then succeeds in killing her and many of her attendants in a fit of jealousy. The main character, Nyang, witnesses this horror, which completely changes her personality and trajectory in the story, turning from a light-hearted, hopeful young woman to someone more stoic and calculating. Nyang eventually becomes an imperial concubine, and Tanashiri becomes even more cruel towards everyone in her court, punishing Nyang exceedingly, resorting to even black magic, and being willing to participate in a coup to overthrow her emperor. Eventually, she finally gets convicted and hung in front of the crowds, leaving her son behind. Oh wait, I forgot. It's not actually her son, it's Nyang's. So you clearly get the gist. She was someone well hated by everyone except her attendants and family, and for good reason too, because of her actions. And you can clearly see the relief in everyone's faces when she disappears. So what's wrong, you may ask? Well, my issue is that everyone is ganging up on her instead of the driving force behind her actions: the emperor and her family. Let's rewind a bit. The only reason she became an empress was because her father insisted, and that was for his own gains. Honestly, while she was a little bratty before this, she was still bearable. She actually reminded me of myself, being so tired and bored of studying. When she stepped into this role, she was not well prepared at all. She barely knew the man she was marrying. He faked his kindness towards her during their courtship stage, which actually made her more confident and eager to marry him. So when she encountered his coldness during their wedding night, where he refused to sleep with her, of course she was infuriated. I also feel that this infuriation is what drove her to be so mean and disrespectful towards her servants, giving them bad names which didn't help in their opinion of her. Her husband refusing to sleep with her was actually planned by the Dowager Empress as well, and rumors of their bedless night were predominantly spread by her, which further plummeted the Empress's reputation. Now, suddenly your cold husband is being nice to a mere maid? Who wouldn't want to scream? And then he gets a court lady pregnant. This hurt to her honor was really the biggest thing that caused her to commit her first truly heinous act, to cause her miscarriage. And when that fails and you are left with yourself fruitless and liable to be replaced because you have no children, who wouldn't be desperate? Might I add that the likely reason she wasn't pregnant wasn't just because she didn't sleep that often with the emperor, but also because the Empress Dowager gave her an incense that made her infertile, just because she was a tyrannical regent's child and her children would cause their bloodline to continue. And also probably because she wasn't that respectful towards her. But I mean, imagine cursing at your boss once, and suddenly you're getting a full-on hysterectomy. Harsh. And this is what causes her to steal a baby and claim it as her own, as well as kill the pregnant, now imperial concubine. I won't deny that she didn't have purely cruel intentions here. But none of this would have happened if she truly knew what she was getting into from the start. Many of her more heinous actions stem from this one incident. She tries to get all concubines kicked out because of how her honor was insulted. I mean, imagine your husband wants to marry 6 other people when he barely gives you enough attention. She wants to get back at Nyang for betraying her. She sees another pregnancy in the palace and feels not only her position, but her son's position threatened as well. So she uses black magic to get rid of her pregnancy. Eventually, when the regime is obviously not favoring her, she goes along with the plan to kill the emperor and finally feel in power for once, which doesn't work out too well. And what do they all have in common? That's right, they were all caused by external factors that would affect her position and dignity, 2 very important attributes she desperately needed. If only her husband, mother-in-law, and the palace were more kind towards her, she wouldn't have been in this situation. Yet, everyone looks at her like she was the root of the problem. In fact, she explains it very clearly here.
폐하께서는 어찌하여 신첩을 그리도 무시하십니까? 신첩은 늘 혼자였습니다. 단 한순간도 외롭지 않은 날이 없었습니다. 신첩을 이리도 비참하게 만든 건 폐하십니다.
지질 못했구려.
폐하께서 이렇게 절 만나러 한달음에 달려오시질 않았습니까? 이렇게 제 눈을 바라보며 말씀하고 계시질 않습니까? 제가 이날을 얼마나 학수고대했는데 제가 왜 뉘우칩니까? 제가 바란 건 폐하의 이런 눈빛이 아니었습니다. 그저 따사로운 눈빛 한 다정한 말씀 한 번 듣고 싶었습니다. 제 아버님이 원망스럽습니다.
This reminds me of something I see today. How women are weaponized against each other by men. And in the end, while both female parties think that they're winning, the man who watches safe from afar benefits the most. Not once did anyone blame the emperor. After all, he was forced to marry her. Yes, sure, I mean, why not at least give her the benefit of the doubt? Try to look at her in a positive light. I mean, come on, she's gorgeous, and she's obviously into him. If he tried, I'm sure the 2 of them would have actually made a good pair together. And what happens when she reacts to his coldness? People on the outside blame her solely, including the emperor, mocking at how low she stooped. While I agree her actions were wrong, I still understand them somehow. She barely had any control of her own life, and the happiness she expected was given to other women who didn't even beg for it. It's always Tanashiri versus Nyang, Tanashiri versus the Empress Dowager, never Tanashiri versus the Emperor. I'd like to point out that the show doesn't truly acknowledge how the whole system drove Tanashiri to her breaking point. The system being how she didn't get to make an informed choice, how her fertility was sabotaged because of hatred for her family's clan, and how she was expected to have just taken it and led with poise and grace as the failing empress of the nation when it was her husband who never once stood up for her. That is nothing short of cruelty to an innocent woman whose life was forced upon her. A minor detail I'd like to point out is how the show portrays Tanashiri's actions as more villainous than of her own father, who basically killed the last 3 generations of emperors and their entire palace entourage in bloodbath after bloodbath. This is seen in how the bulk of the show when she was present was focused on her and her drama. Her father had very little justification to do what he did. He was just acting under his own self-righteousness. But Tanashiri did it to survive. If she didn't try to kill Lady Pak's child, if she let her emperor get bewitched by other women, if she didn't claim another child as her own, if she didn't support her family's actions, she wouldn't have survived. At the end of episode 37, we see Tanashiri's story come to an end. Her family's coup failed. Her father dead. and brothers gone. She now has no one, and she is told to apologize and beg for forgiveness. And only then does she go ham on him.
변한 게 아무것도 없구나.
변했습니다. 폐하에 대한 원망은 분노로 바뀌었고 후회가 저주로 바뀌었습니다. 신첩은 이제 아무것도 남은 것이 없습니다. 아버님도 지아비도 날 위해 역성을 들어주던 내 오라버니도 다 떠났고 이제 악밖에 안 남았단 말입니다.
She fought for her life until the very end, refusing to die pitifully, drinking poison in front of the entire inner court. She smashed bowl after bowl and was greeted with worst capital punishment, hanging in front of everyone. This is the true Tanashiri that so many audiences look past. Alone, scared, and still a child, looking through the crowd, praying to see her family one last time. This is how she goes. Tanashiri was not a saint or even good. She was not gracious, and she wasn't necessarily smart or tactful. But her instinct to survive was there. There are many instances of male anti-heroes who get the understanding and patience from audience, yet we don't afford the same thing for her. The way she tried to survive was not pretty, but let's be honest. She was going to die anyway, being a barren, neglected empress. So will you sit there in your 21st century chair and tell me that if you were her, you would let yourself die slowly, unheard? Or would you rise and fight for who you are, fight for attention, for power, for anything to keep yourself sane and safe? Tanashiri's actions were a product of the system, not just her. It was the imperial palace that made everyone residing in it so lonely and cruel that they see life as eat or be eaten. She was a ruthless fighter in a palace that demanded subservience, and she met her end for it. The emperor, on the other hand, barely fought for himself, being codependent on Nyang and others, and he was rewarded because of it. When I first watched the show, I couldn't wait to see her die. Which is ridiculous because her father and brother have literally killed and tortured tens or even hundreds of people. Now I feel sorry for her and myself for refusing to realize how a part of this was because of how we see female troublemakers differently. Male troublemakers are people who broke out of the mold and established their own identity. But we don't often see that same sentiment applied for women. We call them hysterical, entitled, spoiled, brats. Sounds familiar? At the end of the day, opinions are opinions, and the show is mostly fictional. But it raises a very real point that needs to be addressed, which is how we look down more harshly on women's cruel actions rather than men's. Everyone in the show has their own flaws and shortcomings. But if we can try to empathize with one character, shouldn't we do it for all? So let's flip the narrative and recount Tanashiri's tale once more for what it truly was: perseverance. Tanashiri was someone who wanted to look beyond tradition and customs and wanted to live by her own rules. Unfortunately, her father pushed her into a political marriage and she agreed, not just for her father's sake, but because she was led to believe that she could be happy with her husband-to-be. However, her husband turned out to be cruel towards her, neglecting her entirely, which made her feel so alone in the palace. Soon, her husband started seeing other women and gave them attention, which had potential consequences of her getting dethroned, kicked out, and left without good prospects. So, she took matters into her own hands, dirtying them in the process. She was also rendered infertile by the deceitful Empress Dowager, and since her position was based on her bearing children, she took in someone else's child. Even then, her husband would still not look at her or their child, and she resented him. She tried to prevent other concubines from bearing children, since that would endanger her and her child's position, and when the emperor's favorite concubine got pregnant, she knew that meant trouble. Once again, she tried to salvage the situation, but made it worse, and when her family organized a failed coup, they took the opportunity to get rid of her once and for all, even though she was not directly contributing to the coup. It looks a lot more different now, doesn't it? Believe what you may or may not want to believe, but Tanashiri was more of a victim than a perpetrator in the series, whose only crime was being born in the wrong family, having ideals ahead of her time, and being a woman.